This is Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 259, entitled Masculists' Two Main Messages to Women. Description. This flyer spells out the two main messages Masculists push onto women, that is, 1. Fit up, and 2. Vote with men, in parentheses, to menfair the gender laws. If not, then the Masculists will use MGTOW tactics to punish women by forcing women to be manless and babyless. Flyer itself. Masculists' Two Main Messages to Women by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Masculists have two main messages they give to women. That is, expressed briefly, 1. Fit up, and 2. Vote with men. The first message means that Masculists put enormous moral pressure on women to become FIPs, that is, financially independent persons, bothering to get a career-competent education at high school and college so that they can earn a decent salary as an adult and not expect to be able to parasite off the money of a man, that is, not be a fluffy, a traditional woman who expects to parasite off the money of a man. Fluffies are the enemy of the Masculists. The primary political goal of the Masculists is to free men from manslavery, that is, working for women, worldwide this century, by getting rid of the fluffies, not by killing them, but ignoring them to death, so that their fluffy genes are removed from the gene pool due to fluffies rotting on the shelf, utterly rejected by men, not even being pumped and dumped. The second message means that the Masculists push women to vote with men to menfair the gender laws so that men can be freed from the massive injustices committed against them by the fluffy feminist hypocrite takeover of the divorce courts in the 70s, which has made divorce so toxic for men that 2/3 of young men in many Western countries now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. They are boycotting traditional marriage and paternity, which is having profound effects on society, as this flyer will elaborate on. The reason Masculists push women to vote with men to force the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws is that men do not have enough numbers to form a majority of voters. So the gender politicians, being politicians and interested only in short-term gains, do not give men what they want, that is, gender justice. 51% of voters are women, and women vote more readily than men. So the gender politicians would be committing political suicide if they voted in favour of men, taking away, for example, the privileges of the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts, by giving men joint custody of the kids, throwing out alimony, allowing the owner of the house to keep it, allowing the ex-husband to keep what he came into the marriage with, etc. Most women would not want to be deprived of these divorce court privileges that they have had for nearly half a century, so they would vote against the gender politicians if the latter threatened to menfair the gender laws. The Masculist political strategy to overcome this 51% female voter problem is to force women to vote together with men so that the percentage of voters who favour the menfairing of the gender laws, for example, menfairing the divorce laws, as mentioned above, plus bringing in the paternity rejection right, which would give men the same right to reject an unwanted pregnancy as women have with their maternity rejection right. With a para, a man could fill in a paternity rejection form so that if the woman continues with the pregnancy, then she takes full financial responsibility of the costs of the child. There are also a slew of legal and social discriminations against men that need to be menfaired as well. For example, men retire later than women in many countries. Men are more punished than women for identical crimes. Men are conscripted in many countries, but not women. More money is given to research into women's health problems than for men. For example, for breast cancer research, and much less for prostate cancer research, etc. There's a long list of such discriminations against men. So why do Masculists push these two messages so forcefully and with such moral pressure onto women? The Masculists are much more political than the MGTOWs, men going their own way, refusing to marry, refusing to have kids, and spending their money on themselves, who are rather politically passive, preferring to simply quietly walk away from marriage and paternity. Masculists, on the other hand, fight. They are political animals and look down on the MGTOWs as apolitical wimps who don't face up to the enormous challenge of fighting the genocracy that has become a cancer in men's lives, financially massacring and ruining the lives of a quarter of married fathers in the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts. Masculists see the MGTOW philosophy as a very useful political tool for the Masculists. Masculists see that they can put powerful moral pressure on women to fip up and vote with men to menfair the gender laws, or the Masculists will threaten women with manlessness and babylessness using MGTOW tactics, that is, just walking away from women, forcing women to be manless and babyless, a prospect that scares the shit out of women. The Masculists are not only political, they are visionary. Masculists talk about the creation of what they call a FIP society, that is, a society in which all adults are socialized and educated to be FIPs as a matter of routine. Masculists push parents and teachers to socialize and educate young women to be FIPs, bothering to obtain a career-competent education so that they can earn decent money as adults, become FIPs and not be fluffies whom the Masculists hate so much that they refuse to go near them. With a FIP society, so many of men's gender problems would be solved. For example, divorce laws could be made menfair much more easily. Alimony could be thrown out because the divorcing wife is capable of earning her own living because she has always been a FIP. She does not get half of the ex-husband's possessions because she has her own money and possessions because she's a FIP capable of paying her own way. Custody of the kids would be joint by default, since the ex-wife has her own career and would have more free time child-free when her ex-husband is sharing them. The two ex-spouses could share the raising of the kids equally, which is also much better for the kids. Research shows that the children of single mothers are much more likely to become delinquents, drug users, criminals, commit suicide, etc. Men would be freed from the fluffy mentality of traditional women who look upon men as exploitable cash machines to be entrapped with sex to pay for women to have kids in a middle-class house that he pays for and then loses a decade later in the traditional fluffy feminist-dominated divorce court. So Masculists put enormous moral pressure on women to fip up, that is, become FIPs, or be punished by men by being manless and babyless. As Masculists' ideas keep spreading, women will wake up to the fact that they have a choice. If they do not vote with men to force the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws, then women will be forced to choose between keeping their divorce court privileges on the one hand, but becoming manless and babyless on the other. Women evolved to be dependent on men. In the distant past, a woman who could not attract the attention of a man to hunt for meat for her and protect her from the men of enemy tribes who might kill her, she often did not survive. So women, at a deep psychological level, have a real fear of not being able to attach herself to a man. She sees such a situation as life-threatening. This fear is in her DNA. The primary two tasks of a human female is 1. Find a man-slave to parasite upon so that he pays for her to have babies. And 2. Grow and raise the next generation. That is, women are programmed to be baby factories and child raisers. This is what they are happiest at doing, and feel miserable when they are deprived of it. For example, look at the mass misery of millions of female careerists who are childless because they left having kids too late, well into their 30s, and could not get pregnant due to a decline in their fertility levels. Thus the Masculists have a powerful political tool with which to force women to fip up and to vote with men. That is, the very real threat that they have over women, of depriving them of getting a man and having babies. The Masculists can use the MGTOW strategy of walking away from marriage and paternity to force women to fip up and to vote with men to menfair the gender laws. Thus Masculism is a superset of MGTOW, or equivalently, MGTOW is a subset, a component of Masculism. There are millions of MGTOWs now who have taken the red pill. That is, they have become conscious how toxic for men the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts are now, and want nothing to do with traditional marriage and paternity. There are millions of MGTOWs now impacting negatively on women. Young women's growing awareness of this fact is making them understand why they are having increasing difficulty in persuading quality young men to give them their sperm. Millions of young women now are having a hard time having babies because so many quality men refuse to have relationships with them, not wanting to be financially massacred and having their lives ruined in the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts. Young men are becoming increasingly conscious that superior alternative lifestyles for men open up if they live the MGTOW lifestyle. They may choose not to go full MGTOW monk, that is, having no sexual relations with women, preferring to twee-twef with a woman, that is, twee-twef equals 2A, 2F equals 2 apartments, 2 FIPs, where the man and the woman are both FIPs and both have their own apartment. When the relationship sours, as most do, they both walk away from it, cost-free for the man. No divorce, no alimony, no kids. By twee-tweffing, the man gets the regular sex he needs from a woman without paying the traditional price of being a manslave to a fluffy parasite. He can live cheaply, saving and investing hard, so that he can afford to retire early in life and do what he loves doing, instead of being a manslave to a hated fluffy, and risk having his life ruined by being financially massacred in the divorce courts with 1 chance in 4. Masculists put great moral pressure on women to fip up. A lot more work needs to be done on this score, because in today's world, 3/4 of young women at age 16 choose to become fluffies as adults because they choose to study the soft option, that is, the intellectually easy, intellectually lazy option of studying memory-based, non-intellectually demanding topics such as English literature, history, languages, etc., instead of the analytically based topics such as math and the sciences. These young women choose to study fluffy crap majors, making them fluffy crappers at high school, and hence obliged to study more fluffy crap at college because they are excluded from studying STEM, so that's science, tech, engineering, math, and the professions at college because they did not obtain the analytical subject prerequisites at high school. These fluffy crappers then study more fluffy crap at college and end up with a fluffy crap diploma that the economy does not value, resulting in these fluffy crappers earning low salaries, so that they cannot afford to buy their own middle-class house, so start looking around for some gullible manslave to parasite upon in her 30s, to have him pay for it, so she can sit on her fat, fluffy, parasitic ass and raise her kids in it, and have the whole show kept financially afloat by her gullible, exploited manslave. Masculists aim to so blacken the reputations of young fluffies that women will feel real fear in their hearts if the male members of her social circle label her with the dreaded F word, that is, fluffy, because she will have learned that a fluffy runs a serious risk of not getting a man, so will be manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and poor, shunned and spat at by a society that is becoming ever more FIP-oriented and placing strong moral pressure on women to fip up or be left rotting on the shelf. So you can see why the Masculists place such emphasis on pushing these two messages, that is, FIP up and vote with men, onto women. When women become FIPs, it'll be easier for men to see the gender laws menfaired, and by having women vote with men to force the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws, that menfairing is much more likely to happen. By combining these two messages, these two strategies of the Masculists will create women who are FIPs, and the menfairing of the gender laws will allow men to be freed from the massive gender injustices that so oppress them today. If you're a MGTOW and you find the above two messages and their corresponding strategies convincing, then consider the idea of converting yourself to a politically active Masculist and start pushing the above two messages onto the women in your social circle, telling them if they don't FIP up and don't vote with men to menfair the gender laws, then they will be punished by men by not getting one, so that they will become manless and babyless, a horrible fate for a woman. We men are nearly all FIPs. We are socialized that way, and even evolved to be that way. So we don't need a woman to parasite off to obtain financial security the way a fluffy woman does. A fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some gullible manslave. But the MGTOWs and the Masculists are causing the supply of such gullible manslaves to dry up. Today, about 2/3 of young men under 35 refuse to marry and have kids. Probably within a decade, that percentage will be over 90%, and women will be screaming that men are refusing to give them their sperm. We men have the financial power to force women to FIP up and to vote for the menfairing of the gender laws, or face a horrible punishment, that is, manlessness and babylessness. We men have the financial power to force manlessness and babylessness onto women, especially when we men invent the sex bot and the art womb, that is the sex robot, that are coming onto the marketplace now. And probably within a decade or so, the artificial womb will be with us, so that men can grow their own kids and prefer to sex their bots, which will have luscious curves, film star faces, and creamy, grippy vaginas that women cannot compete with. With these two technical revolutions about to come, plus the above two Masculist messages to women, we men have the tools to force women to abandon their genocracy and give men gender justice. We men have the power to force women to do this. This is what Masculism is all about. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels, De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and De Garis Essays. Ciao.